There is something happening inside your skull right now that most people will never talk about. Not at the dinner table, not with their therapist, not with their partner, and certainly not with themselves. But the science is undeniable. The data is in, and the truth is far more disturbing than anyone prepared you for. This is not a moral lecture. This is neuroscience. This is what pornography actually does to your brain, step by step, from the very first click to the moment years later when you realize something has quietly changed inside you, and you can't quite put your finger on what. Let's start at the beginning. The first time someone encounters explicit sexual content, the brain does something extraordinary. It doesn't just register the image. It floods the system with dopamine, a neurotransmitter so powerful it's also triggered by cocaine, gambling, and every other compulsive behavior known to psychology. Dopamine is not the pleasure chemical. That's a myth. Dopamine is the wanting chemical, the anticipation chemical, the chemical that says, more, get more, now. And that distinction matters more than most people realize, because what pornography does in that first moment is not give the brain pleasure. What it does is teach the brain to want, to crave, to seek. And once the brain learns what triggers that dopamine surge, it begins to reorganize itself around that trigger. This process is called neuroplasticity, and it is one of the most fascinating and terrifying features of the human mind. Your brain rewires itself based on what you repeatedly do and see and feel. It is not fixed. It is not static. It is constantly being sculpted by your habits. And pornography is one of the most powerful sculptors ever introduced to the modern brain. Here is something the researchers at Cambridge University found when they studied men with compulsive pornography use. Their brains showed the same neural signatures as severe drug addicts when exposed to pornographic material. The same regions lit up, the same patterns fired. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making, impulse control, and long-term thinking, showed the same signs of compromise. The same weakening, the same erosion, but they weren't addicted to a substance. They were addicted to pixels. And here is where it gets more complicated. Because pornography is not a static drug. Unlike heroin or alcohol, which deliver a relatively consistent experience, pornography is infinite. It evolves. It escalates. The internet has ensured that the supply is endless, and that the content, if a person keeps searching, always gets more extreme. This is not an accident. It is a direct consequence of how tolerance works in the brain. Tolerance is the brain's self-defense mechanism. When dopamine is flooded repeatedly into the same circuits, the brain begins to downregulate. It removes dopamine receptors. It essentially says, this is happening too often. I need to reduce my sensitivity to keep things balanced. And so what once produced a surge of excitement begins to feel ordinary, boring, insufficient. The brain, now wired to want, begins to want more. Researchers call this the Coolidge effect, named after a bizarre but revealing experiment with animals that showed that males who had lost interest in a familiar mate would immediately become excited again when introduced to a new one. The brain is wired for novelty in the context of sexuality, and the internet has made novelty infinite, inexhaustible, available at any hour, in any mood, in any pocket. The result of this escalation cycle is something the pornography researchers have termed problematic pornography use. And one of its most commonly reported symptoms is something that shocks people when they first hear about it: erectile dysfunction in otherwise healthy young men. This was almost unheard of before the widespread availability of high-speed internet pornography. Studies published in major medical journals began documenting it around 2010, and the numbers have only grown. Young men in their 20s and 30s, with no medical conditions, no hormonal imbalances, no physiological explanation, reporting that they were unable to become or remain aroused with a real physical partner. Some of them could not complete sexual encounters that in every way should have been straightforward. But when those same men sat alone in front of a screen, the response was immediate. Their brains had been conditioned to respond to screens, to novelty, to the specific stimulation profile of pornography. And real human intimacy, with all its imperfections and its limits and its emotional weight, could no longer compete with what the algorithm offered. This is sometimes called pornography-induced erectile dysfunction, or PIED. And while the medical establishment continues to debate its precise mechanisms, the anecdotal reports number in the millions. Communities of men who stopped using pornography and found that their ability to function sexually with partners returned, sometimes after months of complete abstinence from the material. Their experiences suggest something important, that the damage, at least in many cases, is reversible. The brain can rewire again, but the rewiring takes time, and the withdrawal is real. Because the brain does not simply accept the removal of its primary dopamine trigger without protest. When someone who has used pornography regularly attempts to stop, many report symptoms that mirror those of substance withdrawal: irritability, anxiety, difficulty concentrating, a persistent intrusive urge to return to the behavior, emotional flatness, depression, brain fog. The technical term for this period is called a flat line in recovery communities, a period during which the brain, deprived of its dopamine flood, produces very little of the chemical at all. Everything feels gray. Motivation collapses. Joy becomes inaccessible. This is not weakness. This is neurochemistry. This is a brain recalibrating after an extended period of artificial stimulation. But let's go deeper still, because the effects of pornography on the brain are not limited to sexuality and arousal. They extend into the entire emotional and cognitive architecture of a person. The prefrontal cortex, the region most compromised by compulsive pornography use, is the same region responsible for empathy, emotional regulation, patience, long-term planning, and the capacity to resist immediate gratification in favor of future rewards. When this region is weakened, people report difficulties in relationships that go far beyond the sexual. They struggle to be present with partners. They find real emotional intimacy unsatisfying or overwhelming. They have shorter fuses. They make worse decisions. They become more impulsive and less able to tolerate discomfort. A 2014 study published in JAMA Psychiatry scanned the brains of regular pornography users and found that the volume of gray matter in the right caudate nucleus, a region involved in reward processing, was significantly reduced in proportion to the amount of pornography consumed. More use correlated with less gray matter, less structural tissue, a measurably smaller brain region. Think about that carefully. The researchers were not looking at a substance that enters the body chemically. They were looking at a behavior, a visual habit, and that habit had produced measurable structural changes in the brain. The human brain is not designed for what the internet has made possible. For millions of years, the reward system evolved to respond to real, physical, costly experiences, finding food after a long hunt, achieving genuine social connection with other humans, pursuing and securing a mate through actual interaction. These were effortful. They required time and risk and investment. The reward system was calibrated for that reality. Pornography offers the neurological reward without the cost, the signal without the effort, the shortcut straight to the dopamine, bypassing every step that the brain was designed to work through. And when a system is repeatedly given the output without the process, it forgets how to do the process. It begins to atrophy. And yet, the conversation almost never happens. Not in schools, not in healthcare, not in the open spaces where it could actually reach the people it would help the most. The teenagers who encountered explicit material online at 11 or 12 years old, before their prefrontal cortices had even finished developing, which doesn't happen until the mid-20s. The developing brain is dramatically more susceptible to the formation of these neural pathways. The younger the exposure, the deeper the groove being carved. A study by the Middlesex University in the UK found that the average age of first exposure to online pornography was 11 years old. 11. At a stage when the brain is at peak plasticity. When every experience is being used as a template for how the world works. When the architecture of desire and intimacy and relationship is being laid down for the first time. What does it mean to build your understanding of sexuality on a foundation of content that is designed not to depict reality, but to maximize stimulation? What does it mean for how those young people will relate to partners, to their own bodies, to intimacy itself for the rest of their lives? These are not rhetorical questions. They are urgent ones. Because here is the part of the story that matters most. Here is what makes this not just a scientific curiosity, but a genuine crisis. Most of the people affected have no idea this is happening to them. The changes are gradual. The rewiring is invisible from the inside. The escalation feels natural. The numbness feels like personality. The disconnection feels like introversion. The loss of motivation feels like burnout. And the absence of joy feels like just the way life is. The brain does not announce when it is being restructured. It simply begins to feel different to live inside of. And by the time most people make the connection between their habits and their inner experience, years have passed. The pathway is deep. The habit is entrenched. The work of undoing it feels enormous. But, and this is the most important thing, the brain can heal. Neuroplasticity works in both directions. The same capacity that allowed it to be rewired by years of overstimulation allows it to be rewired again by intentional change. The studies on recovery are genuinely encouraging. Individuals who abstain from pornography and replace the habit with physically demanding or genuinely meaningful activities report significant improvements in mood, motivation, sexual function, emotional connection, and overall sense of presence in their lives. The timeline varies. The process is nonlinear. There are relapses and setbacks and days when the craving feels overwhelming. But the brain returns, slowly, unevenly, imperfectly, but it returns. The dopamine receptors begin to regenerate. Sensitivity to ordinary pleasures begins to recover. The flat line lifts. Relationships that felt muted begin to feel alive again. The world, which had become gray and muffled, begins to have texture and color and weight once more. This is not a story about guilt. This is not a story about shame. It never was. This is a story about a system, about a technology more powerful than most people understand, operating on a brain more vulnerable than most people are told, about millions of people quietly living with effects they cannot name, searching for answers in the wrong places. You deserved to know this, without judgment, without agenda, just the science, just the truth, and now you have it. What you do with it is, as it has always been, entirely up to you.